my friends on the intertubes. It's the second Friday of the month, and that means we have ourselves a PHP Roundtable panel. The panel seems to be getting smaller. I don't know if that says anything about me particularly, but I've got a few hanging with me this month. TJ Miller.
Yo, what's up?
And Joe Ferguson.
Hello, how's it going?
How's it going, guys? So, to bring everybody up to speed a little bit, we are talking about potentially getting some guests lined up for the next couple of roundtables that we're really excited about. I've already jinxed it enough times, kind of spoiling who it is, but I'm not gonna jinx it anymore. I feel like I've already kind of I'm that person, right? I played baseball for a very long time, and we're very, very superstitious. I think my lucky stars. I've never become superstitious, so there's that. What you guys been up to? We see this is the thing. What we don't know, and I need to get better about it on this, because as opposed to my other podcast, PHP Ugly, I talk to John all week. And we have conversations, and then we get on and we do our show. These guys, like TJ, I talk to fairly regularly on Telegram. Like, we don't have real, interactions. But and Joe, like, this is like the only time of the month I talk to Joe. So like when we get on before the show, I find myself having these like conversations that then I'm like, we should have saved that for the show. That was a good conversation to have on the show. I get so excited to talk to these guys, and so let's talk. Let's talk about some things.
Let's do it.
Joe, before the show, brought up something interesting that kind of leads into some topics we want to talk about. AI, in the world of AI. Before we get to what Joe brought up, I mentioned something on PHP Ugly last night, and then I tweeted about it today. I'm just curious your guys' input. I asked John last night how he speaks to AI, because like I find myself being very polite.
You have to be nice.
I realize how silly it is.
You have to be nice to the machines.
You guys agree with me?
You got to be nice to our AI overlords, man.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't kick Roombas. Like I see those videos on Reddit of like people like kicking the dog robots around. I'm like, no, that's horrible. You
don't do that.
So people are kicking Roombas? Today I learned. That's awful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Does it, as I don't know where you are in this arc of AI world, Joe, but I know TJ's pretty deep in this. When, in all honesty, when kind of asking for information from AI, does it make a difference?
Yes. If you're interacting with it in a polite way, it's going to try to mimic that, and you're going to get more polite responses back out of it. So if you're like really terse, you're probably going to get more terse responses back, because every time you're interacting with it, your message is kind of guiding that auto-completed response, which is like kind of how these generative AI LLMs work.
It's judging you, essentially.
Yeah, it's judging you, and you're like shaping it to give you back a response. So
it's analyzing tone and the phrasing that you're using, because it's trying to like associate and come back as like relevant and similar to how you're talking to it. That makes it feel more real, when actually that's just pattern matching.
Yep.
Really? Hey, Derek Reasons. I don't think I pronounced his name correctly, but he's a nice enough guy to just say, no, that's close enough. Just talk. Matter of fact, let me throw chat up on here. So if you're watching any of the streams, YouTube, X, I think we're streaming to LinkedIn today as well. You can chat with us in any of those. They pop in here. And then, of course, as always, there's the PHP Ugly Discord, which I'm just too lazy to switch Discord. So the PHP Ugly Discord, the general Discord channel, you can chat in there as well. So yes, welcome, Derek. we've kind of had this thing going, Derek. If you're interested in joining us, hit me up on Twitter, DM me on Twitter, and I'll send you the link. You can be part of the show. That's the reward for being the first commenter on the show. You get to join, or hit me up on I think you're in Discord as well, Derek. But yeah, either one of those if you want to pop up. Okay, AI. So being nice, just like in real life, right? I mean, you speak nicely, people speak nicely to you, kind of the same thing.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So with that said, I found something. I learned something interesting today. Joe, care to share what you shared with me earlier, or is that some secret thing?
Wait, what thing?
Oh, now we're playing stupid. Oh,
I'm just
I'm just the third wheel here, I guess.
there's a lot of things in that list I shared earlier. So
no. What you and I were just talking about in Memphis.
Oh no! I mean, that's a public thing. That's
Okay.
all public knowledge. Yeah, we can talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So, if I found out about this, amusingly enough, I found out about this through Elon Jet, but delayed. If you have ever followed Elon Jet on Twitter, it's a Twitter bot that was famously known for following Elon's plane tail numbers around and reporting where they were going, how much CO2 they were emitting, how much fuel they were burning up, just as a way of raising awareness. And Elon actually got really mad at this and sued before he owned Twitter. And then when he bought Twitter, he actually changed the rules to where this could still be done, but it had to be delayed. So the Elon Jet, I think, is delayed by 24 hours now. And I just saw like he flew to Memphis. And I was like, okay, Elon's in Memphis. That's weird. And then the very next thing I saw was, oh, he's in town for XAI. So XAI is an Elon Musk company, and they are looking at a place here in Memphis to place a very large data center full of GPUs to do training, AI training. So I am kind of, as a Memphis technology nerd, I am here for it, and I welcome Elon to come in and drop tons of money on the Memphis ecosystem and the Memphis economy. I welcome it because we have a mayor that's talking about being very technology forward, and that is something that the city could actually benefit from. So it's exciting from that perspective.
That is really, really freaking cool. Like I'd be super stoked if that was like something happening around here too. Like that's really neat, man.
I mean, do you think this is the future? Like these big companies just creating these AI farms of
I think
GPUs?
this is a couple of things. I think this is a right place, right time, that the facility here is just available. And I think that the situation is right, that the price for the facility is probably well within what a technology company willing to build their own data center. I think the technology or the ground, the building and stuff is probably dirt cheap. I don't know anything on the inside track or anything from that perspective, but I assume, just being in Memphis with our very low cost of living, that there's tons of incentives and stuff that he's hoping to gain out of that, whether that he's going through any of those programs through the city or not, to get tax incentives and stuff like that to do this. I'm not sure. The only thing I've actually heard in passing is that there is a large wastewater facility that's needed to happen. Now, whether that city's paying for that or AI or XAI is going to pay for that, who knows? But of course, what's exciting for me is jobs. Let's get tech jobs in here, and let's help boost that. So that's the big thing that kind of me and my tech nerd friends are kind of excited about.
Yeah,
So,
that's really cool.
But what's the point though, right? I mean, like, is Elon going to have such a need for AI that he wants this huge data center of
so
AI?
training so this is the important part, and the reason that you need so much compute and specifically for training is the more compute intensive process when you're talking about AI. When you're applying an AI model, the compute there is very minimal typically in comparison to how to train the model. Also, in training a model, there's typically huge data sets needed as well. So there's just incredible file and networking IO that happens on that process as well. So the compute need for training is what he's trying to get ahead of, and being able to throw a huge server farm at a training model, you're able to iterate on those models faster, and then you're able to expand the parameters that you're training on as well.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game where we're at with Gen AI and the like a current iteration of LLM technology is that you're playing a game of scale. Like we're basically constrained right now by how much compute you can throw at this stuff. And we're going to be approaching a tipping point where that's just not like it's just not feasible to like keep growing and growing and growing at this scale. So we're going to have to come up with some new iteration on how LLMs are going to work in the nearish future, because we're just going to like run out of room for compute for stuff like this. That's awesome. I think that the jobs aspect is huge.
In what sense?
Bringing like a whole, like the potential of bringing a whole bunch of tech jobs there, I think is going to be absolutely a big deal.
Cool. Now, I'm kind of I'm definitely more of a consumer of AI. I kind of I've been talking to TJ. I want to change that paradigm a little bit for a PHP architect, but I'm also an early adopter. So like I've played with a lot of AI platforms, a lot of AI services out there, and even again, TJ's helped me spin up some open source ones that I host myself. I have had a mixed bag of kind of results from them, and I'm getting to the point now where I need to start cutting back. I need to start focusing in on what's really working for me and what's not working for me as a developer. Right? I get like what works for me as a developer might not be what somebody else needs for AI. Do you guys what services do you use, and is there one like you feel like this is what works for me?
Yeah, I mean, I for more of the like open source coding that I do, Copilot's pretty great. Like it's just trained on a lot of stuff. I think it's come a long way. I was a pretty early adopter on a Copilot, and it was a pretty mixed bag. It honestly got more in the way than it was helpful. Now I think we're kind of on the other end of that. I think it's been very helpful for what I've been doing. For my like stuff at work, I can't be sending that out to like OpenAI or Anthropic or anything like that's like closed source stuff. We do have the enterprise version of Copilot that a lot of my coworkers use, but for me, I just prefer to not leave my system at all. So that's something where I'm firing up, like in VS Code, there's an awesome extension called continue.dev, and that allows you to tap into like OLlama super easy. So you're running local models for that. And there's a whole bunch of models that work great that are specifically trained for coding. So you can kind of like poke around and see which ones like feel good for you. There's a whole bunch of like llama built ones that were like the llama engine, and then they like fed it a ton of different code data, and it works really pretty well.
Joe?
I am just about all in on Copilot just because I was very hesitant and resistant for a long time, and then the more I saw what people were claiming it could do, the more I got to the point where I was like, okay, fine, I'm just going to take it for a test drive, and started it out. And it was really kind of, at first, my primary use was doing Ansible playbooks, refactoring, and essentially upgrading. And this is like mostly YAML files and Jinja templates. So this was files to provision infrastructure and to set up services on remote Linux systems. And Copilot was really terrible at that because it was trained on all of the old Ansible syntax, and it really hadn't caught up with the new Ansible syntax. And even that is kind of a bygone problem now. I don't know if that is just because they're iterating so fast on the models or what, but that's less and less of a problem these days. Most recently, I talked about it, I believe before, trying to play with Rust and taking Copilot and using it as an aspect of using Copilot to build something that I already know how to build in one language in a completely different language. And Copilot and I have pretty much built a working Rust application that is serving a need that I love, and it's taught me a lot about Rust and AI and Copilot. And then most recently, I've been using it in PHP projects just to kind of extend functionality when, as opposed to Googling something. So if I was going to go create a new model or a new API endpoint, instead of going and Googling the specific syntax for the artisan command or to create my new migrations and my models all automatically, instead of doing that through like a Google search and piecing that together in a markdown file and then running the command to go do that, or go create all those files myself, I'll just talk to Copilot and say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to do. And Copilot will start spitting out commands. Now you have to proofread those commands. The commands aren't always perfect, but for a large portion of things, if you give Copilot access to your project in the repository, it's going to give you really accurate stuff in relation to your project.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think like that. I had a very similar experience when I started getting into AI like 2-ish years ago now. I didn't know any Python, and all of the tools at that time were all in Python. So like Copilot and like ChatGPT and I got real friendly on trying to like figure out Python, and it got me to the point where I was able to, you know, spread my wings and be coding on my own with it. But yeah, going from not knowing anything or really even ever looking at Python to like very functional, I was absolutely sold on like this being a prospect for learning like new things based on stuff that I already know. It's so good at that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, me personally, I think I need to give Copilot kind of another go. Like I kind of had started moving away from Copilot, although I still pay for it, oddly enough. But I did go a little heavier in on the JetBrains AI because I was using honestly, I did it because I was a lot more hopeful as far as the AI, specifically with PHP in PHP Storm. And it's all right. I don't think there's enough of a difference between JetBrains AI and Copilot to say, oh yeah, I'm sticking with JetBrains. The problem with JetBrains for me personally is I'm not always in a JetBrains IDE. Like I do a lot of stuff in Vim, which Copilot has plugins for Vim, and obviously it has plugins for a lot of other editors as well. But yeah, I kind of lose that when I move over to Vim, and that again, that's one of the reasons why I think I've stuck with Copilot, because when I'm in NeoVim and editing in there, I have that accessible to me. And when I go to JetBrains, I just use the JetBrains one. But I feel like I need to drop because they're not cheap. I mean, those services are getting expensive. So I feel like I need and then of course I'm using the Olama one, which TJ's kind of brought me up to speed with. And if you're not familiar with this, let me see. Can I switch over? Can I share? I need to share my browser here. This guy right here. So this is an open source project. It's olama.com, and it's AI local. It's really nice. So I feel like I need to maybe dial this in a little bit more for my development and see if maybe I can become less dependent on something like Copilot and just host it myself. But I'm starting to feel comfortable enough with this where I'm feeling like I can, because I still use ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT a lot for non-development stuff, especially as I'm doing emails or working with the magazine and needing some input with that. And I definitely think that this project has for how I'm using it, for how hard I'm using it, this project has enough for me that I could probably just live with this and drop ChatGPT. But it's funny that you guys use ChatGPT still for coding as well, huh?
Yeah. I've stopped paying for ChatGPT and I just use another project that's actually spawned out of the Olama project. There was like an Olama UI. I believe it's now like the Open Web UI. And I use that, and then I just talk directly either through the Sparkle project I'm working on, or I just connect directly to the GPT-4 API. So I'm at this point just strictly using the like OpenAI and Anthropic APIs directly.
Interesting. Well, I mean, where are we at? Like a couple years into this now? Do we think it's changing our landscape at all? Do we think it's making coding more approachable for non-developers, or is it more dangerous?
Yes and no. I still stand by this theory that it'll make a good developer more productive, but it's going to really hamper a beginning developer because you don't know what to look for, and these AI responses aren't always the most accurate, or they can be 90% of the way there, and you kind of got to know that 10% is missing and be able to either prompt it to go back and correct itself, or you have to know to like fill in the blanks yourself. And I think that's going to trip up a lot of newer people, especially when we see things that like update, right? Like I don't think that ChatGPT really has all that much awareness of Laravel 11. Well, if you're getting started as a new person, it's going to be telling you all this stuff from like Laravel 10. And if that's not an 11 and it's like not supported anymore, you're now getting like misleading information, and you're not going to know necessarily how to debug that or figure out like what went wrong where. So I think, yeah, I think it's going to make somebody who's really proficient more efficient. On the other end, I think it's going to be tough for beginners.
If you really want to see how fragile these tools are, open up an editor and start, or go look at a web server log and capture some time series data, right? Just some log, like 5 seconds of logging data where you have timestamps on every line. Go paste that into your text editor, and then go do a new line and start tabbing, or whatever your shortcut is to start filling it out, and watch Copilot invent things into the future. It is ridiculous what it will do. And at the day job, we've seen this in tools as well, where these tools will generate things out of thin air that didn't happen if you don't police the tooling. So this just goes to speak to, I think it creates a lot of noise from junior developers who may not know any better, unless they're actually, running the code and seeing and understanding what the code is doing. I haven't seen a whole lot of just blatantly people throwing PRs that are just nothing but the output of Copilot, which is obviously wrong, and it's very indicative they haven't run the code. I luckily haven't run into that problem very often, which is one of the things I hear. One of the things against Copilot in these tools I hear is complaining that people just throw noise. Well, I think you're always going to have some level of noise, and I think that's where your CI/CD tooling could be better to identify this noise.
Yeah. I have a little bit of a unique problem with that as well. That is, a little bit of a challenge on our end with the magazine, with the publication of the magazine. When we have, especially people, new contributors to the magazine submitting columns and having to make this determination of, okay, is this code, is this good code, or is this like just something they asked Copilot to generate for them? Because a lot of times we'll find misrepresentation. Not a lot of times we find it, but when we have that question and we check into it, we discover, yeah, this isn't good code. Like, there's a problem. We reach out to the contributor, and the contributor's like, oh yeah, I did that through AI, and it's like, dude,
eval links or no bueno, right?
Yeah. and Joe's familiar with this. Our official stance on AI with the magazine is it's a tool, right? I mean, everybody should use all the tools that are available to them, but ultimately the contributor is responsible for the column and code that they contribute. And so we expect that the person writing the article is vetting any information, whether it's code or whether it's facts about the column that they're writing, that they're vetting that through themselves before contributing it to us. And we get a lot of, very suspicious columns contributed of just it's just like, listen, you didn't rate this.
I'm right here. I'm right here.
I wasn't naming names, Joe. It's gotten so bad that we now have a service that was originally designed for plagiarism, but they have attached onto it AI checking as well, and to figure out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we only use it because it's one of these things like you pay for so many uses, and we only use it for typically feature articles, which are columnists who don't contribute monthly, but come in once or twice a year with the column. And if we really question the column or the code, and we're like, okay, we're going to run this through that service and see what it says, and it's helped us a few times. And again, we don't shame people for doing it. We're okay with it. We just reach out to the contributor, say, hey, need you to vet this a little better. This is not this code.
I can't tell you the amount of like typos and stuff Oscar found in my code. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I wasn't even trying AI. I was just couldn't type.
Yeah. We have to do better with that. We try to look at the code. Oscar was a beast. If you're not familiar with who Oscar was, he was the editor of PHP Architect before John and I started running it. And this guy was an absolute beast. Not only errors in code, but ideas in code. Like, wouldn't it be better to do this sort of thing? And then grammar, just in general. The guy was Grammarly before Grammarly was a thing, and I couldn't do it without Grammarly. Like, I just could not reach the level of Oscar. I don't know how the guy did it. The guy
Grammarly makes me sound fantastic. I won't lie. I am a big fan of Grammarly.
I pass everything through either Grammarly or like one of my AI agents.
Yeah.
Like, I don't trust my writing at all. I just stream of thought it. I'm like, hey, organize this for me.
Yeah, right. Explain this.
Explain myself.
Switching from my Pop! OS Linux desktop back to the Mac OS, the only thing where I'm like, okay, I like this, is Grammarly has the little client that runs on all your applications now. It's not just in the browser anymore. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, you're in Discord? All right.
Yeah, I don't have to have like the tab open on the side anymore. Yeah, I don't know what I would do without stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Grammarly has grammar has always been an issue for me. I have probably a slight case of undiagnosed dyslexia, but I get by, and I have my little tricks that I do. But I can read, reread, and triple read something, and then as soon as I hit the send on that email, I'll look at it, I'm like, what the hell? It's like, wait, that is really that's not even close to what I was trying to say.
I think maybe the most proudest I've ever been of my writing is on like a Slack message last week. I correctly used a semicolon without passing it through like Grammarly first. I passed it in Grammarly and it didn't light up red. I was like, I correctly used a semicolon? That's crazy.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we can move on from AI. I think we beat that horse a little bit. Joe, you also brought up ideas on creating good front ends for the non-front end developer, right?
Yeah. So I have a problem. And I can't.
So do I, man.
Yeah, so
that's so many problems.
I cannot create like okay, so I have project ideas and they all need websites, right? Like basic things. And I just want to go put WordPress on there, and then I want a responsive theme that doesn't look like garbage. And then I get super frustrated and spend 45 minutes trying to understand what all of this new WordPress editor thing is. And that was not a fun experience, but that's also like me just being grumpy that they changed so much stuff and not actually reading the manual like I should have, right? I'm sure nobody's ever done that. So, but like going back to like trying to, how do I make this look good? And I struggle. So I'm here to ask for help on how do I, as somebody who loathes the front end, how do I make something or find something look good?
I am with you on this, Joe. 100%. I have no interest. Well, I used to have no interest in the front end. I am getting a little bit more now with the conference website and things like that. But before I give you my 2 cents, TJ, are you a front end person?
I
You have
am.
some nice sites. I've seen you do some nice sites.
I am very proudly a full stack developer. I actually work on like all sides of the stack, and so I enjoy front end. I don't know if I would pick to do it full time, but when I get into like building a site, I definitely enjoy doing it and have fun, like kind of designing on the fly. My my biggest cheat tool, I've got two tools that I really like. I bought Tailwind UI like when they first dropped it. I was all over that, and
Wait,
there's
what is
just
it? Tailwind UI?
Tailwind UI. So that was their
Yes.
their
Holy crap.
premium offering for like components and
Yep,
layouts and
I
all
have
sorts
that.
of stuff. So you can
Yeah.
just like hop in there and kind of piecemeal stuff together. I do that quite a bit. I'm like, I like this nav, or it's like this is close enough. Tailwind is awesome, so it makes it really easy to like even further customize and hack on that. So like that's kind of my first go if I'm like really wanting to do something custom, is like I'll just drop into Tailwind UI, start finding the pieces that I want, kind of slap it together, and then like massage it all until it's what I like. The other tool that I love is like a static site framework called Astro. I think their website's like astro.build. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is
I
a
was
like
looking at this the other day.
I love it. I've probably built 4 or 5 websites with it, and it's absolutely fantastic. There's tons of themes. Almost all the themes for them are like Tailwind, and so you can kind of like get up and running with those too. But just for like super simple static stuff, like this is great, and it deploys to all the like. You can put it on Vercel. You can put it like I use Netlify for all of my smaller static stuff. Super easy to go up there. I think there are pipelines and GitHub Actions to do like GitHub pages with them also. But it's great. There's really easy ways if you want to do like blog or if you want to have like markdown content. I love it.
Interesting. So yeah, that was going to be the only cheat I could give you, Joe. I haven't worked with WordPress. Well, the PHP Architect site is a WordPress driven site, but I haven't like spun up a WordPress from nothing in a very long time. So
It's a
I don't
jungle
even
out
know.
there. It's a jungle out there. It's very different than the last time I did it. And look, I give accolades to the WordPress team for staying modern and being modern. I'm just very out of touch with that. I mean, I call myself a full stack developer in certain scenarios, but I go back to Ajax and Bootstrap because those are tools that are just so finely ingrained, because that's back in my day when I learned those things, that's how you had to learn it. Whereas I just haven't had the time or actual need to go and do the same thing with Tailwind. I also bought Tailwind UI, and it's fantastic. It makes me look like I'm a much better developer than I actually am in terms of front end and UI. And it also helps teach me how people do modern JavaScript things these days. In terms of just NPM and building assets and optimizing assets. That's kind of where I like to get nerdy and figure out, how to optimize the build pipelines, right? Because I'm all about the automation. It's just figuring out how the JavaScript ties in and all that. And at the day job, we have a very large TypeScript application that I've been getting my feet wet into as well. So that's been a whole other experience as well as TypeScript or playing with TypeScript.
Yeah,
Good
one of the
bad?
things I liked about Astro is that it works with like a whole bunch of different front end frameworks, but I couldn't believe how fast like the mental model developed of like how Astro works, how the build system works, like where your different components and content go. Like I was blown away with like how fast I was able to get up to speed, because even like getting into something like Next.js, right? Like that's I felt like it has a lot more overhead than it was getting into Astro, and I was
And see,
incredibly
Astro seems very similar to something like Svelte or SvelteKit, where it's very much a JS-based rapid application, rapid site development, whatever. It's a very complicated way to generate and serve static HTML. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yep.
But so excuse my ignorance on this topic. Like I said, I did kind of start looking at Astro a little bit, and I get very queasy when too much JavaScript is involved and have a tendency to back away from it. But is Astro? It's from what I understand, Astro is like a standalone. Like, hey, you can build a blog with this thing, but can Astro also tie into like a Laravel backend, or is it just? Are we talking two different things?
No, I believe you could build it to hit like APIs and stuff if you want to as well. I've just never had to do that, and if I did, I just made like Ajax requests, like just pull in like Axios or something. But pretty much everything I've done is just like static, like Markdown, either like Markdown content or something. I'm just like hard coding some HTML and just needing to build it all together. For me, if I start like hand rolling stuff, I tend to lose consistency. So what I like about this is being able to like componentize stuff so I can just reuse a bunch of things over and over again. And then I get this automatic consistency across my entire site.
And Joe, as somebody looking into WordPress recently, and again, this is my ignorance talking, but has Tailwind found its way into the WordPress ecosystem yet?
That's a good question. I assume it has. I assume there's some bleeding edge theme developers out there building on it. What I've found is I didn't even venture too far outside of WordPress's own themes themselves. Like they always do a yearly theme that's just typically very beautiful, and it's always accessible, and it's always well maintained and that sort of thing. So I stuck within the 2024, the 2023, the most recent ones. And it was just my own ignorance of trying to edit and use WordPress is what really frustrated me out of it. And ultimately, what I really want is not stuff tucked away in a database. I want Markdown files being consumed by something and made to look pretty. And if I need to attach an API to it, I can. And Astro is something that you could do with that. There's several of these static site generators.
Right.
And there's a whole world,
including several that are written in PHP. So I still don't understand what would take me to this JavaScript into the world if I have things like was this Scallop or Scalpel or
Sculpin, and then Titan Co's Jigsaw.
Jigsaw's the last. Actually, I used Jigsaw last, and then when I needed to spin up another site, I was really torn between like Jigsaw and Astro, and I ended up going with Astro at the time.
Okay, but why?
Jigsaw's awesome.
This is what I don't get. Like, if I'm a PHP developer, why do I leave my comfort zone and go to a JavaScript static site generator?
Maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm a technologist at heart, so I saw something new that was hype and it looked really nice, and there was a pretty rich ecosystem of themes for me to get the ball rolling with, and so I just hopped in it, and in a day I had a pretty functional site, and I was happy with it, and just decided to run with it for a few more.
It's a prime example of me being a PHP developer who hates JavaScript, or likes to say they hate JavaScript, even though I'm completely competent going and playing with JavaScript, that I want to go and learn a very specific thing about JavaScript. I want to go learn how Astro works or how Astro solves a specific problem. That is a project that is, like, for me as a PHP developer, that would be a very easy project to reach for and go figure out and learn some JavaScript that I would then be able to take back to my PHP application and look at my JavaScript front end and probably be able to apply some lessons learned, right? Or at least understand it better if I didn't already. So I see that as a typical mid-level PHP developer working on a huge application. I can see the relevance there for sure. But that's also the mindset of I want to learn and grow, which not every developer is going to have.
That's true. Yeah. And see, I find myself struggling, and this might be the back-end developer and me talking, because I'm just not very great on the front end. When I start looking at these static site generators, even Jigsaw, and I start to build something in Jigsaw, and then I think to myself, I'm like, you know what, so I have a markdown file. I'd rather have that in a database. Like, let me just throw this in a database. And then all of a sudden, I don't have a static site generator anymore. Like, all right, I'm going to put it in a database. I'll put a filament backend on the blog. That way I can put the stuff in the database. And I quickly kind of just lose the whole concept and why I wanted a static site generator to begin with.
But as soon as you add your database, you increase complexity and slow down your application.
Do you? Well, and again,
you absolutely slow down your application from static HTML assets.
But it's my little blog. It's like, what's a couple fractions of a second?
That's an eternity to a 3G connection.
Yeah.
If people remember what those are.
You know, another one that's worth mentioning that I have used in the past too is Hugo. That's a Go based one, but it really kind of stays out of your way. You're not really working with Go all that much with it, but it's pretty fantastic.
Hugo, the world's fastest framework for building websites. Do they have Tailwind? I need to know. It's gotta have Tailwind, man.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure there's somebody out there. Yeah.
Hugo, I tried to get into Go. I really thought Go was going to be like my next kind of venture that I went down, and I got pretty far along with it, and then stopped. You know,
for the most part, you're not really writing Go like you would like be writing PHP and Jigsaw. Like it's mostly a Go application, and you're interacting with like the end result of that. You're interacting with the Hugo binary.
Yeah, more like a WordPress install. Like you can install WordPress and not be a PHP developer and get a lot of functionality out of it, right? So kind of the same concept, huh? Oh, man, see, this is my problem. I need to stay focused. I need to stay in my lane.
I mean, you can always spin up a Laravel app that like spits out like reads markdown files and spits that out. Like I think the previous iteration of my website was just a Laravel app that took markdown files and rendered them out, and I used I don't know whose package it was. I used basically a package that you can like pass it your routes and it'll create like the static HTML for that. So that was the build process, is it would just like basically crawl the Laravel app, output the HTML, and then just save that as like a static HTML file.
Oh, interesting. Huh. All right. But still, I mean, at that point, just host the Laravel app. I'm not trying to be difficult.
But then you have a Laravel app.
I'm a sucker for that, like that raw, snappy performance. What can I say?
Then you also have another Laravel app to maintain that's live on a web host, as opposed to one that's just sitting in the CLI, or just doing a build process. Whereas the attack vector is much smaller.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
that is a lot to be saying, right? Attack vectors, right? I mean, the attack vector on a static site is pretty slim.
And it's like it's not like I'm doing a ton of stuff on my website, right? So it's like it's not something that I'm frequently like I'm not writing as much blog posts as I'd like. So I'm not interfacing with that build process or that app. So it's not getting deployed very often. I'm not really afforded a ton of time to spend like doing maintenance on it or having to like make sure the server's up and running. Like I just push the static files out and I don't have to touch it or even think about it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. All right. So, Joe, you said you're fairly competent in JavaScript, and
I would like to say I'm fairly competent in JavaScript. Yeah.
All right. So explain to me what's the difference. If you're a TypeScript person, are you a JavaScript person? Like,
Absolutely. You are an opinionated JavaScript person. TypeScript is type-safe JavaScript. That's the TLDR there is. And when I say I'm a competent JavaScript developer, you throw me into JavaScript code base, I can navigate my way around. I can go make it run, and I can make myself look like a complete fool. So but in that regard. But no, TypeScript is just a way of writing JavaScript. You can write React, which is an app framework. You can write that in TypeScript. That is a way of doing it. Or you can not write it in TypeScript. You can write it in vanilla JavaScript. There's also people out there that write it in something else, and then they have it transpiled to TypeScript. That way they don't have to write TypeScript, but what they ship is TypeScript, which is type safe, which I think is very humorous that they're doing that, because it's like, then why are you then just write your application without being type safe, right? I mean, I see what you're doing, but it's a lot of extra work to me. Maybe just because I don't see all the use cases, whatnot. So that's so at the day job, we took our React app and we went to TypeScript because we wanted that type safety, and we wanted the flexibility of onboarding new developers to not have to be React devs or any specific framework devs. They just need to understand TypeScript, and that's easy enough to onboard.
But explain that statement to me. You took your React application and went to TypeScript, but TypeScript itself is not a framework.
No, it's a for lack of please correct me if I'm explaining something wrong. It is a way of writing JavaScript. It's like writing a Laravel controller versus writing a plain PHP slim PHP application, how you would write a controller to generate a response.
And if you add a layer of like types to that on top of it, so like the process of converting a React app from JavaScript to TypeScript, you're going to have to take like your component for, let's say, your like header component, and you're going to have to, like, all the parameters you're passing into that, you're going to have to add types associated with those. So it's like, all right, well, this parameter I'm passing in is a string, this one's, an integer, you're gonna have to like add all of those types in, and then you get like a whole bunch of affordances out of it. It's really pretty handy when you get like small scale. I don't know how useful it is, but when you get much larger, like medium to large size applications, it comes in really handy.
We shed 20% of the committed code. Like the PR dropped 20% of the code of the JavaScript code base for our uses, and our uses are very dense data viewer, time series data viewers, and we just pack tons and tons of data on it. So large API payloads, rendering times, it's a lot, but the TypeScript was very much a kind of a dev UX for us, was making it less React-y and React opinions, and allows us to actually build better components, because it forced us to use components in that way, in which we weren't doing before. So our code quality actually went a lot better when we went from TypeScript, because we were from a very DIY cobbled together React app to TypeScript. It's a lot cleaner. Think of modernizing an old Slim application and modernizing into Laravel. That's kind of the equivalency.
Yeah, and there's so many like tooling and compiler affordances that you get out of it, that it makes it such a nicer experience than working with just plain JavaScript. Similarly to like the advantages you get out of using types in PHP, like you can drill right down to exactly where that error is and what type of error that is, and you've got a pretty clear path to resolution there. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Okay, I have to give that another look. I've always been like a not being a JavaScript person. I think I've said it a million times this show alone, but I've been very leery at like even attempting to look at TypeScript. Like I feel like TypeScript is something I would be more conducive to learning, because of like it just seems like it's harder to shoot yourself in the foot, sort of thing, right? If you learn how to do something in TypeScript.
I much prefer it, and for me, I think a really nice entry point into TypeScript is starting to play with the Deno framework, or however you pronounce it. I felt like, because I knew enough Node that I could conceptually understand what was going on there, but that's all TypeScript, and I think that's a good entry point.
All right, cool. Where are we at? 50 minutes in. Come on, we got 10 more minutes of show. Let's go. Next topic. Who wants to bring up another topic?
I'll bring up another topic, because
Do it.
I love giving shout outs to this guy. Joe recently said he ran a Laravel 10 to Laravel 11 app with Shift, and just JMac is killing it over there. I'm about to do the same thing where we've got our main application at work. The day job is a Laravel 9 app, and next week I'm going to be bringing it up to Laravel 11. And I'm expecting it to be pretty pain free thanks to all JMac's hard work.
Yeah, we were just talking about this. Actually, it's funny because back in the day, if you were a Laravel 4, early Laravel 5 developer, uh, upgrades they were painful. They were they weren't easy, you know.
Pack a lunch,
Yeah, yeah,
plan.
and that was that need that JMac saw, and he just came in and just shined right. I mean, everybody just immediately kind of started clamoring to the whole shift service. Now it's like after living through those years, now to do upgrades, like I want to use Shift because I love JMac and I just want to keep supporting him. But I'm like, Laravel has gotten so much better with their upgrades. I'm like, oh, this is not going to be that hard. I'm gonna skip Shift for this one. I'm good. I don't think I've used Shift, and I'm a big supporter of them, but I don't think I've used Shift since it might have been a Laravel 7-8 upgrade that we did.
I mean, Laravel early on went through a lot of paradigm shifts trying to like get its footing, and I think that's why those upgrades were so painful, is because there were just, I think, for the better, these big paradigm shifts in the framework, and we've, I think, really grown out of that to where we've got a really solid set of paradigms, and we're just kind of refining those at this point and adding like new features, but we're not really shifting big paradigms. So yeah, I think we've just like matured to the point where the upgrades are really pretty easy.
It's funny because I remember that was actually one of the things that almost turned me off of Laravel early in my adoption. I actually started using Laravel. We had a guy at our user group, which we should talk more about as well, but we had a guy at our user group who just kept raving about Laravel. This was back in the Laravel 3 days. And he was talking about, what a great developer Taylor was, and this framework was going to revolutionize PHP development. But don't look at it until he releases 4, because all the stuff he's done before is going to just blow your mind.
I can relate to that so hard. I found Laravel in the late 3 cycle.
Same.
And my the first dozen Laravel applications I built were Laravel 3, and it was painful. It was amazing, but compared to 4 was just that revolutionary. That's just how much better things got at 4.
So back then I was a Cake PHP guy. Like that was the only user group talk I had was building a blog in 15 minutes, Cake PHP. That was my talk. I would show everybody, and everybody would be amazed because Cake PHP did a bunch of scaffolding and a lot of those other things. So when he was talking about Laravel, I was like, I'm pretty good on frameworks. Like I don't see me having a need to switch frameworks. But what happened was the paradigm shift within the PHP ecosystem happened, where Composer became a thing. And that's the first time I installed Laravel because I wanted to use Composer. I'm like, okay, what's this Composer thing? Oh, that's right. That Laravel framework uses Composer. And let me try that. And that I always said that it was just like this perfect storm for Laravel and for Taylor, because he released 4 and he had all the bells and whistles of everything that was new in the PHP world. And he just had that be part of Laravel way before any of the other frameworks were doing it. And I remember, like, after I used Composer and I just happened to spin up Laravel with Composer, I was like hard pressed to go back to my Cake PHP install, where you're like downloading a zip file, opening the zip file. But to get back on talking about upgrades, the first time I had to do an upgrade in Laravel, and I realized, hey, wait, there's no upgrade script? Like Cake PHP used to come with these upgrade scripts whenever they did a new release. I'm like, what is this? This is stupid. I'm never using this framework again. And yeah, that didn't stick. So yeah, it was funny. And yeah, upgrades in Laravel for a long time. It was still, even after 4, it was still kind of finding its way, finding its footing, and they were quite unpleasant.
I think 4 to 5 was maybe the worst. The worst upgrade, because that was, I think, some of the biggest paradigm shifts. And all for the better. But yeah, those upgrades.
And you had an LTS. You had 2 LTSs in that as well, because you had a 4 LTS, just 4.2 or 4.1, and then you
I think it was 4.2,
5, and then you had 5 was gonna there was a planned LTS in there. So that was
5.6 the LTS.
It sounds right.
Something like that, yeah. So that only complicated things for a lot of people as well. The cool thing for me, though, in seeing Laravel 4 come out was just blowing so many people's minds with auto loading, because the framework was just doing. It was one of those other things that the framework did so early on, and in those PHP 5 days where auto loading became a standard, and then everybody started doing it, and then all of a sudden everybody realized how easy it was going to be to share code with each other. Just so many light bulbs going on. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So user groups. I mentioned user groups a few times. That was another topic that we had open for discussion. All of us here are past user group organizers. I mean,
current. I still own the domain. I still.
Technically current. Yeah, exactly. Same way. And I always, like, for I don't know how you guys feel about, for me personally, like, especially since taking over PHP Architect, I'm like, how can we be talking about how the purpose of the magazine is to strengthen the community when we can't run a user group in our own town? Like, how is that making sense? But man, I tell you, since that pandemic, it has been hard, and we've tried a couple times to fire up our local user group again. And the one time we actually held meetups, which was for a couple of months, nobody turned out. I mean, our turnout was like 4 or 5 people, and half of them were our employees. It was tough. What do you think? Are user groups, in-person user groups, dead?
No, definitely not. Not in Memphis, they're not. I think a lot of people are still coming out of their houses from the pandemic, for lack of better phrasing. I think a lot of people are just starting to get back to the idea of going on vacations and going to conferences again. I think a lot of it just comes from people trying to figure out, trying to get back to some kind of normalcy. And for us here in Memphis, the groups that are doing well now are the generalist groups. It's it's our web workers groups. It's the other very open-ended group. If I wanted to hold a PHP meetup, I could get 5 or 6 people for sure, but it wouldn't be much more than that, because there's just not that much interest, and the crossover between interest, people having the availability on a random Wednesday night or a Tuesday night to go do that is very low here in town. And that's not indicative of the PHP. PHP is not weaker because of that. That's just because people have different priorities these days. And I get that. But here locally, we're trying to spur events, and we're looking at trying to kind of figure out what is bringing back some tech events that we've done in the past here in Memphis. What does that look like here in town? And from a perspective of user organization, or organizing a user event for the community.
Yeah, ever since PHP Tech, it's been on my mind about starting up a user group again out here. Like, it's something I missed, and I think part of it was one of the most wild experiences I think I ever had was running into somebody who used to come to my user group at PHP Tech, who was like, I think it was like C Money's in the Discord. That was just a mind-blowing experience. And he had said something about, we got to get those going again. And it's been something that's been on my mind and that same thought of just like, what does that look like now? And how can I capture an audience? Because even then, the Laravel Laravel and PHP user groups, we were only the Laravel one. I think we were only maybe pulling like 3 to 5 people at the most. But the JavaScript one I was running, we were getting like 20, 30 people, and it's just a much broader group because it's not only just JavaScript on the front end. You've got all of the Node and backend development with it too. It hit a bigger, broader audience, and I think going a little bit like, as broad as you can with it is going to be the biggest advantage.
Yeah, back in the heyday in San Diego, we would hold 3 user group meetups every month. A what was called North County SDPHP, which was general PHP for the North County of San Diego. In the center of the county, we'd hold the San Diego Laravel meetup, which for a while was pulling in way more people than either one of the general meetups. And then we'd hold another general just SDPHP meetup. And it was like that every month. Like every month the wife knew that 3 nights a week, 3 nights a week for the month I was at these meetups. And that was always like my little hack. Like when we had our consulting group, which I mean technically we still have a consulting group, but when the consulting group was our only business, that was the hack. Like you'd go to these meetups and you'd find these hobbyist developers who were so like wanting to learn more that they were coming to these meetups. And it's like, okay, you want a job? Like, how good are you? You need some work, I mean, we hired, I think for the first like 10 years of our previous company, I think we hired one person that we did not get through either our user group or another user group. And it was just, that was like this gold mine of either people who were wanting to become professional PHP developers or professional PHP developers who were looking to expand their knowledge, maybe wanting to move on to another position. It was just this gold mine of talent back then. So yeah, I miss those days.
The PHP NYC meetup, they've been, I think, kicking that back off again, and I've heard some pretty good stuff. And I think they're also doing like they're live streaming it also. I could be wrong about this, but I know they've been getting that going, and I've heard some pretty good things. And so it's nice to see those start to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I don't know if this is still the norm, but back in the heyday, I know the NYC PHP user group, I believe they were the ones that used to charge an admission to the meetup. Like everybody had to pay, whatever it was.
They had so many people RSVPing, they could never get everybody in.
Yeah. I'm like, that's crazy. Like that is absolutely.
I mean, as an organizer, if you're planning on like 30 people being there and you're getting like sponsors and like food and everything, and then like 10 people show up, like that's a really tough proposition to like run into. And I think we even started getting into some of that situation with the JavaScript group where we were getting like 60 people RSVPing and then like 20 would show up. It's fine that we only had 20 people, but like we planned on 60, and now we've got this like kind of awkward situation with like sponsors and like venue stuff. Like it got kind of weird. And so I don't know. We never really found a solution to it, but charging a cover is going to get people to commit.
One of the things that we've done locally, well, pre-pandemic, what we did at one of the hackathon events is we charged a $5 fee for a ticket. And then when you came in to get your badge, we handed you a $5 bill. And that was the thing that we did to kind of make people have some skin in the game to do it.
Love it.
And we're talking about doing that again at an upcoming event that's focused on charity. So the idea is, okay, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to have buckets in front with all the charities' names on them. So if you don't want your $5, you give it to one of the charities, right? So just make it easy for people to make that decision, but also have them keep skin in the game, right?
Dude, I love that idea.
You can either take your $5 back or give it to the PHP Foundation.
Right, exactly. That sort of thing. Sure.
I love that idea. Maybe we'll get back to that point. Yeah, but I will say, shameless self promotion here, but not having the user group meetups every month now made me really appreciate running into people at tech more. I think it just felt so good to just kind of be, in your comfort zone, like just with people, other like-minded people. And yeah, it was, because that was always my thing about the user groups. It's just like you didn't have to go and explain what you did for a living, or try to get somebody to understand why you were so passionate about it. Because if they were at the user group meeting, they're probably just as passionate about it as you are, and it was good. I enjoyed it. Well, I have enjoyed this podcast. Maybe the podcast is the problem, right? We substitute podcasts for meetups now, and yeah. No, that's not true. Listen to the podcast. Listen to all the podcasts. Subscribe to the magazine. Do all that stuff. And yeah. I don't know. You guys have anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Nah, man.
All right, man. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this month. If you're not aware, we've rebooted PHP Roundtable we are not rebooted. We've all kind of agreed as a panel that every second Friday of every month, we are going to get together and talk, right? Whoever's available, we'll talk. We'll get guests when we can find guests. And if we find guests, maybe it won't be on the second Friday. It's whatever's available. But that's our goal. The second Friday of every month, we will at very least come together. And the point being is there will be a regular flow of PHP roundtables moving forward. So if you have something you would like to contribute, doesn't have to be PHP related, just tech related, web related, or web adjacent, and you want to be part of a panel, reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Twitter, or reach out to any of us really on Twitter. Yep. or Mastodon, and hunt us down. All of our information will be on the PHP Roundtable website. You can click on any of us. Which reminds me, Joe, are you still an X person, or do you prefer Mastodon?
I will do whichever. I'm still on whatever.
That's not a loaded question. The only reason I ask is I made some changes to the code, and I only did it for Sarah. But that if you have a preference, now it'll load those profiles. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm probably going to be. I keep saying I'm going to be making changes to the site so that you can click on and get a panelist profile, more of a profile. But yeah, all of our socials, how to get in touch with us, will be on the website. So please do that, and please don't hesitate. I mean, again, this is all about sharing. That's what Roundtable. That's why Sammy, created Roundtable, because he just enjoyed talking to people and getting all these different perspectives of what was going on in our industry and things around our industry. So if you're one of those people, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you on. All right, that's going to do it for this month, and we'll just wrap it up here. Thank you. Bye.